Hello, this is Chaotix, and welcome back to the first actual challenge run I've done on this channel. Block Tales is an Earthbound-like RPG made in Roblox, in which you collect shiny swords and use said shiny swords on your quest to search for Builderman. Along the way, you'll obtain new items, cards, abilities, and increase your stats by gaining experience and leveling up. However, with experience comes suffering. Ever since we've been getting stronger, our soul has been tainted and we're no longer pure of heart, so why not fix that by having no experience whatsoever? Can you beat Block Tales Chapter 3 at level 1? The rule is the same as last time. Our current level must remain at level 1 throughout the entire playthrough. That's it. As long as we follow that singular rule, we're free to blatantly cheat however we so please. Before we begin, however, there have actually been some slight changes to the overall run itself thanks to some updates. For starters, chapters 1 and 2 will actually be significantly easier now, due to most enemies having less health and damage than they did previously. The rolling health mechanic is now also slower when not doing anything, so you have more time to potentially save yourself from death. Some enemy lunges have been made smoother to make when to block or dodge more apparent. And finally, Training Wheels no longer has the XP penalty, meaning we now get 100% of 0 XP every time instead of only half. With that being said, we've got a few things to change. During my recording session, something terrible had occurred. Line bounce was nerfed into the ground. What once was our most reliable way of dealing with multiple enemies has now been made basically useless, having its damage halved rounded down. For those unaware, line bounce originally dealt 2 damage, and that's without the hyperball upgrade you get later in chapter 3. Since this has been halved though, this means that line bounce now only does 1 damage per hit. Even with the hyperball upgrade. It's quite simply not worth it to use line bounce anymore, and thus will remain unequipped. This will likely be the largest change to the run so far. If you wish, you can keep the ball equipped to potentially inflict status effects on bosses. Whilst that is a valid option, personally I'd much prefer having the consistent multi-target damage, which can be especially useful during the final major bosses. So we are deviating. Return to Turretopolis and finally pick up the launcher to replace the ball. Whilst it too only deals 1 damage and can't hit a full party, it can at the very least deal damage to 3 enemies at once, assuming they have no defense. Plus, once we actually obtain the hyperball, the launcher will deal 2 damage on a direct hit, with the splash damage still dealing 1. This makes it a pretty reliable card to have at all times, especially with its second ability to lower an enemy's defense by 1 for 3 turns. Obviously, since we're launching rockets and not balls anymore, you can also unequip Minimize, freeing up another BP slot. Additionally, you may also notice I kept charge throughout this entire playthrough. That's because I'm a dumb stupid idiot and never used it once. Because of the rocket launcher's ability, you might also be tempted to take the slingshot with you, as it can technically do more damage than the sword, but I generally still preferred keeping my sword for enemies with more than 1 defense. Additionally, coconut water has also been nerfed, now only healing 4 HP and SP instead of 8. There is another item that you can replace it with, however, but it's a little more expensive, those being cookies costing 25 ticks each. They can only be bought at this shop here in the train. Coconut water is still a decent choice, however, especially with how cheap they are. They're more useful as SP restoratives compared to them being an all-in-one healing item though. The last major change is to the Ice Dagger, making it significantly more useful for this run. The Ice Dagger now regenerates half of your health and SP rounded up, as opposed to just 20%. This means that you can heal yourself for 5 HP and 3 SP for free, as long as you have enough sword energy. With all the pre-rambling out of the way, it's time to get to work. Once you've prepared yourself, return to Roblox HQ and talk to Chatletsky to obtain the train ticket. On your way to the train station, go into the card shop, stare at the prayer card for 5 minutes before realizing it's completely useless, and leave, whilst also forgetting to purchase Power Rush like a dumb stupid idiot. Enter the train to officially begin Chapter 3, All Hallows Eve. Once on the train, take a nap and deal with any of the bandits that you're able to. A lot of these bandits, especially the helmet bandits, are pretty difficult to take on. Because of this, running away like a little sissy baby is always a valid strategy. And remember that running is always guaranteed on the second attempt. You do lose 10 ticks every time you run away though, and that may be a problem as you can purchase cookies on this train. I only had enough for 3 of them, whilst keeping some miscellaneous items I picked up from certain enemies, such as this late skin potion. After running away from pretty much every fight that that even vaguely looks like a threat, make it to the leftmost room to begin a scripted battle. This battle has us teaming up with red and blue. They do a pretty decent amount of damage, but realistically they're better off as meat shields. The most troublesome enemy you'll face in this battle is the Helmet Bandit, with 4 defense. If you're lucky, red and blue will take care of him before dying a painful death, but if not, charge some sword energy and use the Venom Shank. The Venom Shank is a very powerful sword, dealing 2 damage to all enemies and inflicting them with poison for 3 turns. This damage completely negates any defense and the poison is usually guaranteed, meaning you can deal a pretty significant amount of damage against them without having to lower their defense in any way. Once the fight is over, you have one more scripted battle to do before reaching the cemetery, that being the fight against purple and green. This fight is significantly easier than the previous one, since red and blue don't usually die a painful death here, giving you some free extra damage. And you only have 2 opponents to worry about instead of 4. Whilst their attacks are pretty strong, they don't really pose much of a threat as long as you keep your health up. Once purple and green have been defeated, you'll arrive at the cemetery. Just before advancing further, however, red and blue will give you your first call card, which basically acts as summons. These, unfortunately, are basically useless during a level 1 run. Not only does this card cost all of our BP, it costs 6 SP to even use, which we don't have. There is only one call card that you can potentially use in a level 1 run, and that's the Gorilla card. But it's a rare drop, it costs 2 BP to equip, costs 3 SP to summon, and the Gorilla does barely any extra damage compared to just hitting the enemy with your basic sword attack twice. Call cards are also always used at the end of an enemy's turn instead of your own, so their use as a meat shield is not great either. It's generally not worth the hassle. During the cemetery, you'll encounter the undead. These enemies are significantly easier than any of the bandits you fought on the way there, so nothing here should cause you that much trouble. During which, you can also find the Softener card. If you're insisting on using the ball, then this is a pretty decent card to keep alongside Minimize, lowering the enemy's defense by 1 for 3 turns. If you're using the launcher though, this card is completely useless, both because it's completely useless and because it's completely useless. If I was smart at this point, I probably would have equipped either Power Stab and Safeguard to give myself some extra survivability, or Power Stab, Power Rush, and maybe Sword Toss for some extra damage output when low on health, which will be common throughout a lot of the major boss fights. After turning the living dead back into regular dead, we move into Telamon's Manor, and I've got awesome news. We're about to get one of the best healing items in the level 1 run. Entering the kitchen and talking to the refrigerator, we can purchase cookie dough. In a normal playthrough, this item is basically useless. In a level 1 run, however, it can be a lifesaver. It only gives us 2 HP on use, which doesn't seem all that useful, except it can be used infinitely when in battle. It can be used outside of battle, unfortunately, likely to prevent people from soft-locking their inventories by filling it with just cookie dough, but 1 is all you really need. And trust me, you will want to keep it for every fight going forward. After following the butler into the ghost world, you encounter not only zombies, but also squatters, Vlads, ghosts of hacks, and skeletons. Skeletons are one of the other many reasons I decided to equip the launcher. If you kill a skeleton whilst there are still enemies on the field, the skeleton will revive itself after a couple of turns have passed. However, if you kill the skeleton with a direct explosion, such as the dynamite or launcher, they'll stay dead for good. The dynamite costs all of our SP to use, so personally I think it's worth throwing rockets at every single ribcage instead of pipe bombs. Vlads are extremely annoying if you can't dodge their attacks that well, as their attacks will also regen their health and poison you. However, they have a very exploitable weakness to fire, meaning now is a perfect time to use those rocket boots you've probably been neglecting all run. The squatters can be slightly annoying as they can heal and give Defiant status effect to anyone, but overall they're pretty easy to take down. And Ghosts of Hacks are by far the easiest to deal with, as you only have 1 ranged attack, which is pretty easy to dodge, and it doesn't do a whole lot of damage regardless. Before dealing with them, however, if you go through the first door you see after entering the manor and go downstairs when in the red room, you'll be forced into an encounter with the turkey. You'll be required to do this eventually, so it's best to get this out of the way now. The turkey will likely be your first major roadblock during Chapter 3. It seemingly only has 1 move, that being Turkey Fury, hitting you twice for 3 damage each. It's not too difficult to dodge or block, thankfully, unless you're bad at video games like me. However, after 4 turns have passed, the turkey will have enough of your shenanigans and shoot you on the spot, dealing 12 damage. If you're wondering how to avoid or block it, you clearly weren't paying attention. The turkey shoots you with a gun and deals 12 damage. No amount of dodging, blocking, or status effects will change the fact that we take 12 damage. And, I don't know if you've noticed, but we only have 10 health. So, that's it, right? We can't deal enough damage to the turkey before it shoots us, right? Well, yeah, we can't. In any other RPG, this would be the end of the run. But we're not in any other RPG. Block Tales is inspired by Paper Mario, and more specifically, Earthbound, implementing its rolling health system into the game. So if we were to say, eat some cookie dough before our health ticks down to 0, what would happen? We live with only 2 health left to spare. It's recommended that you're at or at least decently close to full health before taking a bullet, so that you have enough time to eat something before your inevitable demise. Once you've gotten a new pair of pants after surviving that attack, the fight is basically over, as there are thankfully no spare bullets lying around. It's not long before this turkey is roasted. Ignore the fact that the turkey is raw. After making your way to the haunted kitchen, you'll meet the chef that you killed in Blackrock, definitely not on purpose. He'll yell at you to grab some ingredients, those being a spider to make spider cider, which can be found in the green room after taking an easy quiz, some dust, which can be found in the guest bedroom, and a turkey, which can be found in our inventory. After which, he'll give you the ghost potion, our 5th major tool to use during battles and in the overworld. Drinking it turns us into a ghost, which is completely intangible to hazards and certain walls, as long as you remain perfectly still. Whilst it's not particularly useful in the overworld other than to avoid some encounters, it will be especially useful during some of the later boss battles. After solving an easy puzzle and moving forward for a bit, you'll be right in front of the Hyperball. Just before picking it up, however, you'll have to fight the Slasher as a boss fight. The Slasher is thankfully a pretty easy boss fight so long as you don't mess up your blocks or dodges often. Slasher's signature can be tricky to avoid as it hits 4 times, dealing 2 damage each. As long as you're at full health, however, it can't kill you, but do try to avoid as much as you can. Jump Stab deals a devastating 7 damage, but it is pretty easy to counter. And finally, Shield Up increases his defense by 2 for 2 turns. When he does use his shield, it's recommended that you just don't bother attacking and instead take this time to heal up, restore some SP, or charge sword energy. If you have nothing else to do and your sword energy is charged, hit him with the Venom Shank. It doesn't take long before we defeat the Slasher and take the Hyperball for ourselves. A couple of rooms and encounters later, we make it to the room containing the Ghost Walker. With the Slasher defeated and our soul clearly pure as day, the Block Tales Chapter 3 Level 1 run is mission failed. Oh, we found Builderman. With Builderman found in our soul clearly pure as day, the Block Tales Level 1 run. So it turns out that despite having no experience, our soul still remains tainted because of our past sins of playing the game normally. So we have to go ahead and purify it ourselves. After getting rudely awakened by Builderman and going outside, we enter the first section, Avarice. It was around this point where I decided to just give up in dealing with any of the random encounters here, running away from most of them. After traversing through all the mannequins and through the maze, we reached the first boss of the dream world, Greed. Greed only has 3 moves, the first being to slap you a couple of times, dealing 4 damage each. The timing window to dodge is completely messed up. You have to press the dodge button when the hand hits the floor and not when it hits you. The second is Stretchy Solution, which will make you lose ticks every time you get hit. I completely forgot how it worked during this run, so I opted to just charge sword energy and pass my turn. According to the Block Tales wiki, it can also apparently heal itself if it deals enough damage, but thankfully it will never get the chance to do so if you're playing solo. The third is a Clap, which deals a whopping 8 damage, but is also pretty easy to dodge. Thankfully, Greed has a very consistent attack pattern. Slap, Stretchy Solution, Clap, Slap, Repeat. My strategy basically involved just hitting Greed until it died, healing with the Ice Dagger and Cookie Dough when necessary. It wasn't long before I defeated the very concept of Greed. On an unrelated note, did you know I have a Patreon? Now to enter the next section of the dream world, Isolation. Once again, I ignored every enemy that I could and ran away from the ones I couldn't. After solving a quick puzzle, it was time for the next boss, Solitude. Solitude, just like Greed, has 3 attacks. The first is Spike Shot, which can deal 8 damage and ignores defense. Once you get the timing down for it though, it's a pretty easy attack to dodge. The second is Pain Rain, where it fires 6 shots towards you, dealing 2 damage each. These are also pretty easy to dodge once you get the timing down. The third is Detachment. Once you see Solitude use it, do not attempt to attack it under any circumstances until its effect wears off. If you do, Solitude will gain extra attack equal to the maximum amount of damage you've dealt to it. Meaning, if you were to, for example, use Power Stab, which does 5 damage, it will get plus 5 extra attack for its next turn. And at that point, its next attack, which will always be Spike Shot, has the chance to instantly kill you if you don't at least block. Charge sword energy, heal, recover some SP, do anything other than actually attack. The attack pattern is simple. Spike Shot, Pain Rain, Detachment, Repeat. Overall, I found Solitude to be the easiest out of all of the Dream World bosses. It's no cakewalk, but as long as you know the timing windows for all of its attacks, it'll all be fine. Like with Greed, I just kept hitting it until it died, only stopping whenever it used Detachment or to heal and recover SP. After a few minutes, I was lonely no longer. Unrelated, did you know I have a Discord server? It's now time to move on to the next area, Terror. After traversing through what is basically a Yumi Nikki world and going through a walking simulator, I made it to the Purple Forest puzzle, which I may have failed a couple of times, but at least there's no real penalty for doing so. Once I made it through, it was time to face my fear. Fear, being the second to last boss, is naturally also one of the most difficult. It has 4 moves, 2 damaging and 2 support. Shockwave, which is pretty easy to dodge but can do upwards of 8 damage when not at least blocked. Total Dismay, which applies silence to you for 3 turns. Call for Help, which summons a phobia. And by far the most dangerous, Apprehension. This is a laser that charges up and the guard and dodge window is extremely small. Not to mention, it deals 10 damage, being an instant kill unless you heal yourself in time. When the update first released, this attack, whilst it was still difficult to dodge, had an audio and visual cue to dodge with its orb turning yellow. However, as of the latest updates, it doesn't. Fear's attack order is as follows: Shockwave, Apprehension, Call for Help, then Total Dismay. Repeat. Now this all sounds pretty difficult, especially with those high damage numbers, but luckily if you're bad at video games there's a very simple solution, using unforgivable cheese, all for the cost of 1 SP. After Fear uses Shockwave, if you have at least 1 SP by the start of your second turn, use the Ghost Potion and Apprehension will never hit you. No skill or timing required. This does cause you to lose your next 2 turns, but I consider it more than worth it due to making Fear's most dangerous attack completely useless. Whilst it is recommended you kill the phobia as soon as it spawned, it's not a big deal if you can't. Its only attack is Rebirth, which can only deal a maximum of 5 damage, and it disappears whenever it does. Total Dismay is a total non-issue. Essentially all it prevents you from doing is using moves that require SP. It's a good time to either get yourself healed up if you haven't already, or get to hitting Fear with swords. Eventually, many turns later, I finally chopped down this tree, officially leaving us with one last boss to go. After being deceived by the color red, we're sent back to the dream world to begin our descent into the final area, Wrath. Once again, I ignored every single encounter I could to make my way towards the Vein Center. After reaching the final area, it's just a matter of walking southwest while drinking ghost potions whenever the screen turned red to avoid taking damage. After making it to the Vein Center, it was finally time to unwrap the heart and confront Hatred itself. Hatred, being the final boss of Chapter 3, is by far the most difficult boss in the game up to this point. All of its moves are extremely powerful, and getting hit even a single time by any of Hatred's attacks will more often than not result in a death. Corruption is a ranged attack that fires 3 very fast projectiles. Getting hit by one will deal 4 damage and cause confusion for 3 turns. And trust me, you do not want confusion, especially during a life or death situation. Confusion will, at random, replace your current action with hitting someone random in your party, and once you know it, we're the only one in the party. Dread, meanwhile, is its most scary attack. The timing window is basically impossible to see if you're looking at your character, so I recommend looking at Hatred instead to time your input. Missing your dodge and or guard will deal 12 total damage, guaranteeing your death if you don't heal yourself in time. And if you just so happen to be confused at that point, then there goes your attempt. Hatred can also call for help, summoning an apparition. Apparitions don't have a whole lot of health, only having 6, but its attacks can be dangerous, both dealing 5 damage each. They aren't too difficult to dodge or counter, thankfully. Its most infamous move, however, occurs after it charges. On its next turn, it will attack, and you will die. You just cannot grasp the sheer power of Hatred's attack, as it does 60 damage, undodgeable and unblockable. The only way to avoid it is by turning invisible, which you can do with either the Ghost Potion or a Haunted Cheeseburger. Doing so will also completely negate the corruption attack it does immediately after. Additionally, Hatred also has a passive fast effect, meaning it can attack twice during its turn, similar to how we've been fighting in a solo playthrough. The only exception is when it charges. Hatred's attack pattern is as follows: Corruption and Dread, Charge, Hatred and Corruption, Dread and Call for Help. Repeat. This will be the toughest fight you've had up to this point, and this is also the only fight that took multiple attempts during my personal playthrough. In my second attempt, I also managed to barely survive a Dread attack after I failed a dodge, which had never happened to me at all during any of my hours of playing. Keep your HP and SP up and keep some spare sword energy on hand to either heal or deal some extra damage with Venom Shank whenever an apparition is on the field. Other than that, just keep attacking until eventually you purify your soul. Oh, I should shut the f up, actually. I was gonna use a cooking. Can't kill this turn. Oh wait, I can. Eat sh. Yeah! With the Ghost Walker in our hands and our soul actually pure as day for real this time, the Block Tales Chapter 3 Level 1 run is mission complete. For now. But hold on, we're not entirely finished yet. In the first video, I mentioned I would eventually be going through the pit. And I think now's the time to finally fulfill that promise I made several months ago. Almost. Before I made my way into the pit, I finally decided to stop being a dumb stupid idiot and purchased Power Rush. If you're unfamiliar, in the last video, Power Rush gives you a passive +1 to your attack when your health is at 5 or below. With it only costing 1 BP and the fact that we have some left over from unequipping line bounce, it's an obvious choice to have it equipped throughout the entire game. Head back to Plainstown and pass the Anthill to encounter the optional boss of Chapter 2. You wouldn't usually be able to access this area until you have at least gotten the Iron Sword in Chapter 2. This optional area leads you to the Supreme Mosquito boss fight. This mosquito has more health than even Hatred, and all of its attacks are dangerous. First, there's Double Pierce, which can hit you twice for 8 damage each. Poison Pierce, which also deals 8 damage, casts poison, and heals the Supreme Mosquito for however much it hits you for. And finally, Call for Help, which summons a mosquito swarm. Luckily, despite how much damage the Supreme Mosquito can deal, their attacks are fairly easy to dodge. After 2 attempts and a bunch of turns later, they've been swatted. Defeating the Supreme Mosquito gives you the Investor card, which can be very helpful if you ever need to grind for ticks in the future. Now, it's time we descend into the pit. Floors 1 to 9 are all enemies found in the prologue. Floors 11 to 19 are all enemies found in Chapter 1. Floors 21 to 29 are all enemies found in Chapter 2. And floors 31 to 39 are all enemies found in Chapter 3. Every 10 floors marks a checkpoint, which includes a healing pad, a free card, and most importantly, a spawn point, allowing you to teleport back here whenever you wish. This means that you can leave, get some useful items, and then return later. With that being said, let's get started. As you'd probably expect, floors 1 to 9 are pretty easy to deal with, as all of the prologue enemies are relatively weak. Floor 1 is against a Helmet Noob and a Knightly Noob. Hit them with your sword until they die. Floor 2, a Cultist Noob and a Sharp Nooblet. Hit them with your sword until they die. Assuming you land a first strike, they don't even get the chance to attack. Floor 3 has a Cultist Noob, a Knightly Noob, and a Winged Nooblet. It was around this time that I had learned something extremely useful. If you focus for your first turn, you can immediately use either the Ice Dagger or the Venom Shank on your next turn, as you'll always start with just enough sword energy that one focus is enough to fill the meter. So on this fight, I immediately used the Venom Shank, killing the Winged Nooblet and leaving the remaining enemies on critical health thanks to the poison. Using the Venom Shank also doesn't negate the effects of First Strike, so you can keep your buff for any certain enemies. The remaining enemies didn't stand a chance. Floor 4 has both a Sharp Nooblet and a regular Nooblet. Once again, hit them with your sword, they're too slow to ever attack. Floor 5 has a Winged Nooblet, a regular Nooblet, and a Helmet Noob. I immediately focused and used the Venom Shank, killing both Nooblets and guaranteeing the Helmet Noob's death at the end of his turn. Floor 6 includes a Nooblet, a Devious Rat, and a Winged Nooblet. Once again, focus, Venom Shank. There's basically nothing they can do to survive. Floor 7 includes a Devious Rat and a Cultist Noob. For this one, I immediately used the launch on the Cultist Noob and then again on the Rat, killing them both. Floor 8 is the first with 4 enemies, a Cultist Noob, a Winged Nooblet, a Helmet Noob, and a Sharp Nooblet. Focus and Venom Shank to instantly kill both Nooblets and leave the Helmet Noob left to die. Then it's just a matter of hitting the Cultist with your sword. Floor 9 is our rematch against Red and Blue, as well as Noobador. My strategy was simple. Kill Blue off immediately by hitting her with 2 sword swings, kill Red the next turn using a Venom Shank and a sword swing, and then just keep swinging at the Noobador until he dies. With that, we've reached our first checkpoint. Now to move on to Chapter 1's enemies. Floor 11 includes a devious rat, an ant army, a smoky pine, and a hungry wolf. Once again, focus Venom Shank to kill the ants and leave the rest fending for their lives. Floor 12 includes 2 ant armies, a hungry wolf, and a cheeky eagle. Again, Venom Shank, then simply hit anyone who doesn't die after the first turn. Floor 13 includes 4 cheeky eagles. Venom Shank, hit anything else that survives. This would have been over much quicker if one of them didn't use an onion ring, but regardless, it's an easy fight nonetheless. It was around this point that chat told me something very useful. If you hit any enemies in the overworld using dynamite, you actually get +2 damage with a first strike, instead of +1. Floor 14 includes a crossbow crony, a cheeky eagle, and the banished knight. I used the Venom Shank for my first 2 turns, got hit, used some cookie dough for my next turn, and watched as the crossbow crony immediately ragdolls into oblivion. And then just hit the banished knight with my sword to finish the fight. Floor 15 includes a loyal knight, a hungry wolf, a crossbow crony, and a snowy bear. The bear is always asleep in the overworld, meaning you can easily attack with the dynamite and get the +2 damage buff. Once more, Venom Shank. I countered the knight's attack, leaving everyone except the bear at 1 health. I then ate some cookie dough to regain some lost HP and watched as everyone exploded violently. After which, 1 power stab was enough to defeat the snowy bear. Floor 16 includes only the banished knight and a loyal knight. Immediately, I used a power stab on the banished knight to lower their HP to 1, then proceeded to launch with the loyal knight after countering the banished knight's attack. I then just simply tapped the loyal knights with my sword to finish this floor. Floor 17 is an exact repeat of Floor 15. The same general strategy applies here, though if you end up missing your counters like I did here, use the launcher on the wolf. With the +2 extra damage, the splash damage of the rocket will now deal 2 damage, meaning all that was left was to hit the bear until it too died. Before doing so, however, I took the time to stall a bit and get some health back using the ice dagger. Floor 18 includes a crossbow crony, a sentient statue, and a loyal knight. The first thing I did was use the Venom Shank. I dodged the statue and crossbow and countered the knight, leaving everything but the statue at 1 health. I then used the launcher on the statue, killing both the crony and the knight, and leaving the statue at low health. After which I just hit the statue with a power stab to make it through without much issue. Floor 19 is the infamous Weezer room, containing 4 sentient statues. It's highly recommended you at least know how to block or dodge the unexpected zooming. The timing will be slightly different per statue, as each one moves to the back before actually attacking, so make sure you keep an eye out. Once again, I started with the Venom Shank. I failed to properly dodge a couple of them, so I opted to minimize their next attack by using a magnifying glass I had in my inventory, whilst healing myself with some more cookie dough. In the next turn, I hit the front statue with my powered up sword, then used an ice dagger to heal. 1 power stab later, and the front statue crumbled, leaving only 3 left. I used a rocket on the middle statue to deal a little bit of damage to every other statue, and then I used the ice dagger again. Once again, I hit the front statue with a power stab. Next turn, after 1 more sword attack, the second statue eroded, leaving just 2 left. I hit the back statue with a rocket, leaving them both with 5 HP. I then hit the one in the front with a sword, leaving it at just 1 health and giving me enough sword energy to heal myself with the ice dagger again. I hit the back statue with a rocket again, destroying the third statue. And after 1 more sword attack, the final statue was demolished. With that, we enter the next checkpoint, get fully healed up, and move over into floor 21. Floor 21 includes a hedgehog and a flying mantis. I hit the flying mantis with a rocket and countered its attack. I did it again next turn to kill it, leaving the hedgehog at 1 HP. 1 more sword bash later, and this floor is complete. Floor 22 includes a purple frog, a mosquito swarm, and a gar. The purple frog quite literally poses no threat to you, so you can just ignore it to focus on the mosquito swarm and gar. I started off this fight using the Venom Shank again, guaranteeing the mosquito swarm's death after a counter, leaving only the gar. 1 sword slice was all it took to defeat it afterwards. At floor 23, I also learned from the chat that hitting enemies using the Hyperball's ground pound will actually give you the +2 damage that the dynamite does. This floor contains a flying mantis, a hedgehog, a toxic dartman, and a gorilla. As per usual, I used the Venom Shank, killing the hedgehog and leaving everyone else at very little health at the end of their turn. Then it was just a matter of launching a rocket at the dartman to kill everyone else. Floor 24 includes a gorilla, a toxic dartman, a mosquito swarm, and a gar. The same strategy as before is applied. Floor 25 includes a mosquito swarm, 2 ant armies, and a flying mantis. Once again, Venom Shank can blow up whatever's left with the launcher. Floor 26 includes a gorilla, toxic spearman, a purple frog, and a tree golem. Once more, Venom Shank. Then, thanks to my powered up launcher and the purple frog running away, hitting the tree golem guarantees everyone dying thanks to the poison. Floor 27 includes a Tree Golem, a Toxic Dartman, a Venom Wizard, and a Toxic Spearman. I used the Venom Shank first turn, then I used the powered up launcher to attack Toxic Dartman like a dumb stupid idiot. If I was to hit the Venom Wizard with the launcher instead, it would have killed everyone except for the Tree Golem thanks to the poison, meaning I could have easily just used Power Stab to finish the floor much earlier. Instead, I decided to kill the Tree Golem right then and there with my sword since it was only at 2 health. The Venom Wizard then died at the end of their turn, leaving just the Toxic Spearman. Instead of killing them immediately though, I opted to stall and focus to get most of my health and SP back, after which I just bashed his face with my sword to end the fight. Floor 28 includes a Purple Frog, a Venom Wizard, and Bigfoot. This was the first actual floor I struggled with here in the pit, mostly due to Bigfoot's insane damage output and difficult to dodge attacks. I'll be honest, I had no real strategy going into this fight. I simply used the Venom Shank first turn and just kept on attacking whilst healing myself as necessary. I came close to death several times, but eventually I made it through with half of my health to spare. You may notice I also didn't heal myself before entering the next floor. That's because I'm a dumb stupid idiot. At floor 29, the Weezer room returns with a vengeance. 4 Komodo dragons. Instead of using the Venom Shank immediately, I used the Ice Dagger to heal myself back to full health. The Venom Shank isn't as effective here because these are, to my knowledge, the only enemies in the pit to completely negate poison, meaning you're at most only dealing 2 damage to every single one with no extra benefits. It's still a decent option, but I opted to just simply keep using the launcher instead. This floor is actually what caused my first death in the pit. A note about dying in the pit. If you die in the pit, you are sent back to the last checkpoint. Meaning, if you die at floor 29, you get sent all the way back to floor 20 and have to do all of those fights again. Considering that when they use Growl they get 2 moves per turn, the difficult to see timing window on the Venom Bites, and the sheer damage of the Tail Smack, this will be the toughest fight in the pit so far. My second attempt here went much better thankfully. I used the Venom Shank immediately since I had full health this time and kept using it throughout the fight if I didn't need to heal. I also opted to use a Slate Skin potion I had whilst going through chapter 3, increasing my defense by 3 for 3 turns. The fight becomes much easier with each subsequent kill, so I recommend focusing on one at a time. Eventually though, with enough swords, rockets, and elemental swords being used, I finally put them all down, officially making it to floor 30 and completing 3/4 of the pit. But now, it's when the fun and games end, because from this point onwards, the difficulty spike here goes through the roof. In advance, we'll be doing a little bit of prep work. In Turretopolis, you can buy green tea, which restores 5 HP, 5 SP, and gives you half a bar of sword energy. Already a decent item on its own, but you can also upgrade them by going to the Ghost Chef, turning him into matcha dorayakis. These are largely the same as green tea, but they give the 5 HP and SP to everyone in your party, along with filling up 75% of 1 bar. It's here why I also finally picked up the Slingshot from the Banished Knight in Telemon's Manor. You can pick up Power Shot here if you really want to as well, but I don't consider it worth it as we'll only be using the Slingshot for a couple of specific fights. Additionally, I also recommend buying and equipping Deep Focus here as well, which will grant you an extra 20% more sword energy whenever you use Focus. Floor 31 includes a Helmet Bandit, a Regular Bandit, and a Big Bandit. As per most fights, I immediately use a Venom Shank. After countering the Helmet Bandit and the Regular Bandit, I use a launcher on the Big Bandit to kill both them and the Regular Bandit. After which, it's just waiting for the Helmet Bandit to succumb to the poison. Floor 32 includes a Flying Zombie, a Sharp Zombie, and a Regular Zombie. Once again, Venom Shank on the first turn and dodge as much as you can. Then I use the launcher on the Sharp Zombie to kill both them and the Regular Zombie, whilst letting the Flying Zombie believe it can do something before dying to the poison. Floor 33 entails a little shift in strategy, however. It consists of a Squatter, a Vlad, a Skeleton, and a Ghost of Hax. The first thing you should do immediately is use the launcher on the Skeleton to destroy it instantly so it never has a chance of coming back. Then make use of the Rocket Boost to hit Vlad. As long as you counter Vlad's attack, they're guaranteed to die next turn. Afterwards, bash the sword against the Squatter's face. Finally, stall for a bit to heal yourself and your SP to full whilst dodging the Ghost of Hax attacks. Trust me, you will need them. Once at full health, exercise the Ghost of Hax to officially begin your attempt. Floor 34 will be your first major roadblock here. If you don't have a decent grasp on dodging most of these attacks, you are not making it through here. It consists of a Mold Man, Purple, Green, and the Slasher. Assuming you hit the +2 damage, I highly recommend killing off the Mold Man immediately, using a Power Stab and a regular sword attack, so you can deal some good damage against Purple and Green. The most dangerous opponent here is Green. Their attacks deal incredible amounts of damage, and after 3 turns, all of their attacks will also cast poison. If you're not already at full health and you fail to at least block their attacks, you are dead. Slasher signature is a very tricky attack to avoid as well, and all of Purple's attacks are extremely quick. My strategy was to focus on Green as much as I possibly could, using the launcher and occasional Venom Shanks whenever I had sword energy to spare. With enough launchers and Venom Shanks, I finally managed to defeat Green. By this point, Purple should also be pretty low on health, so take the opportunity to strike them down as well. The Slasher at this point is easy pickings. Take the time to heal up if possible, then proceed to end their life. Floor 35 will give you a bit of a break. It consists of a smiling bear, a orange boy, a confident boulder, and a your bombing pal. Absolutely do not attack anything else other than the bombing pal. Your bombing pal has one of the only attacks in the game that cannot be dodged or blocked under any circumstances, so get rid of them as soon as you can. Once they've been defeated, the rest of the fight should go smoothly. If you need to heal and don't want to waste any items, kill everyone except the boulder, as their attacks are the easiest to dodge. After floor 35, we then move on into RNG Hell. Floor 36 includes a Be Happy, a Mold Man, and 2 fellas. I recommend killing off the Be Happy in the first turn so you only have 1 attacker to deal with. The Mold Man here is a non-issue. They barely spend any time attacking, and whenever they do, it's never enough to instant kill you at full health. That said, it may be scary as the Mold Man's attacks are not able to be super guarded, meaning you're taking at minimum 4 damage. They usually spend their time using Shield Up, which gives them +3 defense for 3 turns and being unable to do anything. Since we're playing solo, however, it's really only like 1 turn. You can also mitigate their attacks entirely by using the Ghost Walker, which completely negates any 2 attacks. It's likely you'll get enough sword energy to use it again if it ever runs out. Fellas, however, are strictly a support enemy, and depending on what they end up doing can make this fight extremely long and tedious. They can either use Charge Up, which gives every enemy +2 attack for 3 turns, Feel Good, which gives every enemy the Fine status effect for 3 turns, Heal All, which gives every enemy +2 HP regen for 3 turns, and Jackpot, which gives a random singular enemy all of the effects above. Your primary goal here is to defeat the fellas, but that can be extremely difficult if they decide to spam heals, making it basically impossible. Put simply, this fight is meant to act as a DPS check. But don't give up hope. Being good at video games is not a requirement. While it's slow and annoying, this floor is basically free. Just keep using the launcher, and if you're lucky enough, they'll all go down. Venom Shanks can be used here as well, though because of the Fine status effect they can give, there's a decent chance they'll simply negate the poison. Additionally, if you're at a low enough threshold to where Power Rush kicks in, hitting the fellas with your launcher will always deal at least 1 damage, even when they have HP regen. I do recommend having the Ghost Walker active when at low health, however. Once you've paid respects to the fellas, the Mold Man is easy pickings. After floor 36, we then move on into regular hell. Floor 37 consists of Greed and 3 Your Bombing Pals. Without any defense buffs, the Bombing Pals do a total of 4 damage. 4 times 3 is 12, meaning the probability of survival here is a little bit less than 0. Your objective is clear. Kill the Bombing Pals ASAP. You have 2 ways of dealing with them depending on what you have in your sword slot. If you're insistent on using the sword like some dumb stupid idiot, you absolutely must hit Greed in the overworld with either Dynamite or the Hyperball Ground Pound. Otherwise, the strategy I used will not work. If successful, a single sword attack will destroy one of them, and a power stab will destroy the second. If you do not wish to be a dumb stupid idiot, instead equip the Slingshot. That way, even if you miss the +2 attack bonus, you can still use the Slingshot's base attack on 2 of the Bombing Pals to destroy them easily. You'll still get hit by 1 Bombing Pal, but as long as you at least block Greed's next attack, you should have no problem destroying the last one in your next turn. Once the Bombing Pals are defeated, Greed is extremely simple and you shouldn't have any issues dealing with him the same as in the base game. Floor 38 thankfully doesn't have any threats of imminent death, but will still be a little bit tricky. It consists of 3 Mold Men and Solitude. Do not, under any circumstances, equip Slingshot for this fight. It will make the entire fight even slower than usual if you don't have Power Shot, and even then it will only deal 1 damage if their defense isn't lowered. My strategy basically consists of killing off the first Mold Man in the first turn, then hoping that at least one of them shields. If not, you absolutely must dodge Solitude's attack, or it's an instant game over. Obviously, you should deal with the Mold Men first before dealing with Solitude, especially if it's using Detachment. If all 3 Mold Men are shielded, however, don't be afraid to use a launcher on Solitude if Detachment isn't active. That said, if you're good at dodging all of Solitude's attacks, you can still get some extra damage in there whilst Detachment is active, though don't blame me if you flub a dodge and end up insta-dying. It may also be worth it to use the Ghost Walker when dealing with some of the Mold Men, as again, their only attack is one that cannot be super guarded. Whatever the case, once only Solitude remains, the rest should remain the same as when you fought Solitude in the base playthrough. After floor 38, we then move on into Super Hell. Welcome to floor 39, the final floor of chapter 3 and the greatest challenge that the game has to offer currently. 3 fears. This is by far the most difficult fight you'll come across, not just in level 1, but in the entire game. You may be a bit confused. Wouldn't the strategy just be the same as the regular playthrough, just with 3 of them? And you wouldn't be wrong for the first 2 turns. Hit them, use the ghost potion before they all use apprehension, etc. However, when one of them summons a phobia, this plan will no longer work, as they will all start to desync. The other 2 will use Total Dismay immediately once a phobia is on the field and go through the pattern as normal, whilst the one that summoned the phobia will use Total Dismay the next turn. If you get hit by any apprehension other than the last one, you are likely dead, as the rolling health will take down to 0 before you have a chance to heal. Put simply, this fight will require you to be at the top of your game, and unfortunately, you will have to be at least decent at video games. Don't give up hope quite yet, however. There's still a few things you can do to turn the odds in your favor ever so slightly. Before even entering, throw your sword in the trash and finally equip the slingshot. The slingshot does more overall damage than the sword, in exchange that it can't do anything against armored opponents unless you use power shot. Power shot, however, costs 2 BP, and I'd rather keep both defocus as well as power rush. Your third slot would depend on your playstyle. I originally opted to forego the uses of my launcher and return to the old reliable, Minimize. Minimize, according to the wiki, has a 79% chance to proc on fear, so it's a good way to at least save yourself from 1 apprehension, assuming you're at full HP. That said, in my successful attempt, I ended up unequipping Power Rush and using Safeguard. Whilst it doesn't increase your dodging window like defending would, I found it to be useful for dealing with the shockwaves, as well as potentially giving some wiggle room if you manage to block an apprehension. For your first turn, very importantly, do not try to attack. Just defend ASAP. If you fail to dodge even a single shockwave here, you'll die before the fears even get the chance to use apprehension. Then, attack the front fear and use a ghost potion to avoid the triple apprehension. Afterwards, one will use call for help, and the rest will use Total Dismay. For my strategy, Total Dismay is basically just a free turn, as we have no attacks that even require using the SP, except for your items including the Ghost Potion. Don't worry about that too much, however. Charge up 2 bars of sword energy before they start using apprehension again. Then, before the end of your turn, use the Ghost Walker. Using the Ghost Walker will make you automatically dodge 2 attacks for free. It'll basically act as a safety net for whenever you fail to dodge the apprehensions. Dodging normally, however, will not get rid of this buff, so even if you have the buff active, you should at least try to dodge some of them. And trust me, you will want to save them for the apprehensions, so it's extremely important to not let yourself get hit by anything else that turn. If you fail to dodge both of them, there's a high likelihood you won't have enough sword energy to use Ghost Walker again, thus putting yourself at a much greater risk. After a few turns, if you're lucky, they'll all sync with each other again, meaning you can go back to the strategy you used on your first few turns. Focus on 1 fear at a time, specifically the front. The sooner you take out one of them, the easier this fight will become. If lucky enough, you'll take out the first fear whilst the other 2 are synced together, meaning the 2 will remain synced until the end of the fight. And that's it. That's all of the tips I have for you. With enough dodges and good usage of your Ghost Walker, eventually, you too will kill your fears. If I don't miss this now, it's over. We did it! Oh my god! Oh my god! Level 1! Holy sh! With the pit thoroughly conquered and a useless deep focus card obtained, the Block Tales level 1 run is an ultimate mission complete. For now. If you want to try this run out yourself, it is highly recommended. Chapter 3 in particular made me rethink a ton of strategies I used, not just in the main game, but also in this challenge, and it's been fun experimenting with different loadouts. If you want to see my full playthroughs of both Chapter 3 and the Pit, all of the streams are in the live section on this very channel. Special shoutouts go to Game Champ 3K. Her Kingdom Hearts Level 1 runs inspired me to make this video and attempt this challenge myself. If you haven't watched her content, it too is highly recommended. And finally, a special thank you to everyone who tuned into the streams, giving me useful advice and helping out whenever possible. And that's about it. Thank you all very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, like, comment, and subscribe. That's what everyone says to me anyway. I stream sometimes, and I have a Patreon if you want to support the channel in a more direct way and gain some cool perks. I also have a Discord server, links in the description. And with that, I shall see you all next time. Ciao for now. Special thank you to Mago's Artistic Corner, JadenRod123, YoshiGod211, Applebean, and X Solely for becoming Black Mages, and a very special thank you to Twitchy Camera for becoming a Chronomancer. I appreciate all of your support.